Hollis Hammonds, and I'm here with Francesca Fuchs at the Menil Collection to talk about her exhibition, The Space Between Looking and Loving, Francesca Fuchs and the Menil House. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
I wanted to start by talking about the letter that John de Menil wrote to your father. I'm curious, first of all, how it felt to find that connection between your family and the Menil Collection, but also if you could lead us into how that discovery led to this exhibition.
So my father was a German archaeological professor, and he died in 2016. My mom downsized, moving from Oxford to London in 2019, and so in helping her sort of go through all the stuff that had accumulated, I went through this huge pile of black and white photographs that were all beautiful sculptures of different parts and things. And in going through them, there were these 3 photographs where I was like, oh, I feel like I recognize this sculpture. But mainly also when turning it over, it said on the back, the Menil Foundation, when it was still trying to be part of Rice University of the Arts as a collaboration. I was astonished because it was just this question of what on earth are these photos doing in my father's things, because I knew of no connection whatsoever. I take my time working through things. The pandemic happened. This thought was still nagging in the back of my mind. I kept the 3 photos and took them back with me. And then I got in touch with the museum to basically go, is there any way that we can find out why my father might have had these 3 photographs? And I got in touch with Paul Davis, and yeah, he was like, oh, look, here is this letter John de Menil wrote to your dad in 1970. Yeah, you could have just kind of knocked me over with a feather at that point. I mean, yeah, processing that was astonishing, truly astonishing. I'm still truly astonished to think about that. What are the possibilities or odds of me living in this city since 1996 and then finding this really randomly bizarre connection from me to the museum I love the most, I think, in Houston. And yeah, I would even say it's one of my favorite museums anywhere. So that was the starting point. And I work from things in the home and things we pay attention to and look at and love. And so this was sort of the starting point of talking with Paul, and he took me to see the Menil House, which I had never seen before. And so we just started a conversation to see what we might do with this, or if we were going to do anything with this.
Could we talk a little bit more about the sculpture itself and how you've represented it in the exhibition?
So we have the actual sculpture, I don't know if it's in the frame, but it's right behind me on a pedestal. It's a beautiful piece, so right, it has a lot of presence in the space. And then in some ways, the entry wall, so the short wall that you come in to see first, it has the front of one of the photographs and the back of one of the other photographs, and the letter next to it as a sort of opening gambit. And then the wall also shows how I work, because we then have 2 sketches, 2 frame sketches, that one of the front and one of the back, of me painting the photograph. I'm not painting the torso, I'm painting the photograph of the torso. And then we have a painting that I made of the back of the torso. As objects, there is this full triangulation in the space of the actual object, its photographic representation, my sketch of it, and then my painting of it. And which is actually kind of how I work. I work from the photo. I mean, the photo is almost always in this triangulation of how I work, that I take a picture of the object, I work from the photo, and then the sketch is what I work from for the painting, and I leave the photo behind at that point. So with each translation, I'm trying to get a little closer to the thing that I'm actually trying to represent and show and paint.
I wondered if we could unpack the title a little bit as well in relationship to how you approach making the work or the exhibition. And so the space between looking and loving is, I think it's implying a poetic tension really between observation and maybe affection. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that related to your process or your painting process, for instance.
Yeah, like the gap between those two things is where we're trying to hold so much in this show, of relationship, of connection, of echoes. We built so many connections throughout the show that you could unfold for yourself with careful observation, even if you don't know so much about the history or even these objects. And so I think in some ways the whole show is asking you to slow down and really kind of spend time with your looking process. For me, I in my practice, I make paintings of objects, often paintings or framed prints or even framed photographs that I grew up with or have spent a lot of time looking at in my home, different home environments. And in making a painting of the thing, I am not trying to replicate it as a copy, a direct copy of the thing. I'm making a translation in a way into my hand. I mean, it's always very obviously very painted. You can see the brush strokes. So it's this translation into my hand, and in the translation, I'm looking for being able to reveal my affection and the energy that this object has, maybe from the years of looking and loving that it has received from the people that it's lived with or the different places it's been in. I try and, I guess, transmit some kind of affect in the making of the painting or object.
Yeah, it makes me also think, because your work is, or I've read that your work is often about memory within objects, or like that emotional quality within an object. And so I wondered if there were any pieces in particular that we could talk about this idea of memory, like how you think about that and how it's represented.
I mean, what is different about this show, so I'm kind of thinking, I think a lot about objects as holders of memory and affection and deep affection. What is different about this show is that I'm translating my act of looking that I normally apply to my own things and my own family to the de Menil home and their looking. So the archives come in very strongly in this show, and in some ways I'm feeling my way into the love for these objects also through the love of the archives and looking through documentation of things. So the archives are very much referenced in the show, in that many of the paintings are in a grayscale because that's how I found them in their first setting. But I also, in my looking and kind of detective work of, well, which objects did the de Menils really live with and love? Which things hung in their private spaces, their bedrooms over the years? I'm also looking very much with my own bias at their collection. There's a painting that I'm highlighting in this show, which is Max Ernst's Fleur Coquillage. It's a really small painting that I love deeply and have known in the collection from previous iterations where it's been displayed. And so seeing it repeatedly in the home environment in photographs, it was also a piece that I wanted to kind of highlight. And so we have in the show the actual Max Ernst Fleur Coquillage. We have my repainting of the Max Ernst Fleur Coquillage. And then we have me seeing the Max Ernst Fleur Coquillage in the corridor with these crazy colors of Charles James interior decor, where there's this bright magenta, and I think it's right behind me, yes. And so this kind of wanting to paint the magenta blur also onto the wall. I'm painting my love for this object, but also through the lens of the archives and what I am imagining is Dominique and John de Menil's love for this object.
Yeah, I was also thinking about that because there are lots of photos, right, in the archives that you studied, and it seems that their relationship to the art and how they lived with it is very specific. You know, like they were very intentional in how they displayed the work, how they hung the work and put things together. And I was just curious if you felt like you learned something about those, you know, the de Menils through those photographs.
Oh, I learned so much. I felt like I learned so much, and it's also changed my relationship to some of the objects in the collection. So there's a Waltz painting that really, as far as I can tell, lives in the bedroom space pretty much from the 50s through the 90s when Mrs. de Menil dies. It's hanging at the moment in the museum, which I think is also beautiful. It's hanging in the surrealist section. My painting of it is a black and white grayscale version. This is a painting I hadn't thought about a lot in any kind of, I mean, I saw it in the Waltz show that was put up a while back by the museum. I enjoy Waltz as an artist, but I now have a relationship with this object in a way that I think about it differently. I think about it living in a space and living with the love and looking of the people it lived with. Objects have a way of holding so much. They hold their own history, they hold all these different places, they hold their maker, and I do think that we get glimpses of that in looking.
I was curious if, you know, this project has in some way furthered that practice or changed it in any way. Do you think, like, moving forward, has your thoughts about, you know, making these works and arrangements changed in any way? I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely, and deeply, I think. It was deeply exciting to be able to work with objects that are not mine and have them in conversation with objects that I made. I mean, my practice, I think, is to call it conceptual is sounds very removed and abstracted. I don't mean it in that way, but I always think of the holders of conversation that I want to have happen over a show. And so this conversation in this show is just can hold so much more, and that is a very exciting prospect. Yeah, that I would love to explore in different ways as I move forward.
Time is one of the questions I wanted to ask you about because, you know, this exhibition, the thing that I love about it is it really feels like a conversation or a discussion over time, right? And also between generations. And I just wondered what you thought about that.
I completely agree. And yeah, that's very much built into the show, almost wanting to collapse time. At the idea that time is chronological. I mean, I know that's how we move through life with that idea, but there is this kind of overlapping of time that I find deeply interesting. And so the show opens actually with a double frame of two photos from the 1980s. I mean, one is reproduced now, but the other one is from the 1980s of my home and the de Menil home. Like, we're looking into the living room from kind of a corner in both of the photos. And so that's a time marker, right? Already right there as you move in. We're in the 1980s. And then you look up on the wall and there's this ceramic owl, which, if you pay very close attention, is actually a tiny little thing in the photo of my family home, which is a ceramic that I made and gave to my dad in the 70s, early 70s, as a child, and he hung it up, right? And so it hung in my home as part of the other things that were on the wall. And so I brought this owl as this, I don't know, guardian witness of my family life and home to be present here with these other objects. And then obviously we have works in the collection that, like the male torso, which is from right before the Common Era, and then we move all the way to paintings that are made right now. So the objects themselves and their histories come from all over, and they connect through this conversation. And maybe the most important aspect is also that it's through this triangulation of love. The whole show is this triangulation of love, in that it's my love for my father. He's here through the letter, and the photo is found. John de Menil is here through the letter, and there's also a Cartier-Bresson photo of him sitting on Charles James' chaise longue reading the newspaper. My mom is here because I have a conversation with her. It's the one audio piece about these koala bears that I made as a child and had to remake for her because one of them got lost. And then Dominique de Menil is also here because we are displaying the pin door that she had between her bedroom, or their bedroom, and her dressing room. She had a desk next to it for many years, and so it's a door on which she pinned kind of notes and thoughts and cards that accumulate, that also are accumulating time, basically, because this pin door holds things from we think that it was probably started in the early, 70s sometime, all the way through to the 90s. So yeah, we're touching on time in so many different ways, and these conversations across cultures maybe too.
Since we're sitting in front of this body of work, I would say, could you talk a little bit about the Matisse, the copy, your version?
Yes. This kind of grouping and the koala bear grouping are maybe on some level the key kind of groupings to unlock the show. So we're looking at Matisse's black leaf on green ground, which lived in the kitchen. As far as I knew this piece from the collection, and I saw it in black and white photos in the kitchen. So I was like, oh, this obviously always lived in the kitchen. And then I found a black and white photograph. The black and white photographs, I found these early slide images from the 50s that were in color. And I'm suddenly looking at it and I'm like, what? This green Matisse that I thought was green is red in this picture. So that opened a lot of questions of what is this piece? And so in doing some object research with Paul Davis, who curated the exhibition with me, we discovered that they did own this black leaf on red ground, and it was gifted to one of their children for their wedding. So my positing, I don't of course know what's behind there, is that they missed their Matisse in the kitchen and then purchased the Matisse on the green ground. So this Matisse on the green ground lives kind of in the same place in photographs over time. And then it was there in the house when I visited with Paul, and I was like, Paul, I know the Matisse is in the collection. Is it really hanging here? And it was like, no, it's a copy that was made by William Steen, who was an artist, but also a framer at the Menil in the 80s. And so the copy was hanging in the house from sometime in the 80s, probably when, right, the piece needed to be moved to the collection. I mean, the story there is like we actually kind of found some information through Walter Hobbs about this, but my imagination was that Mrs. D wanted her Matisse in the kitchen, and so that this Matisse held the place. And I guess a lot of my thinking is as objects, as placeholders of emotion, right? And the question is what does that object, the value of that object is irrelevant on some profound level in terms of its placehold, right? The way that it holds emotion. And so I wanted to make my painting of the red Matisse, just to reference it also, as this kind of, holder of a time past, and a different time where it was also living in the space.
Yeah, it really feels like it closes the circle of that entire story. It's really great.
Find all of our videos and sign up for our newsletter at artthisweek.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.